Red earring in the drain. The first thing I found was an earring, small and red like a drop of punctuation, lodged in the sieve of our shower drain. It winked up at me like a secret with good posture. I turned off the water and held it between my fingers, feeling the way a stranger's heat hangs in metal after it learns your skin. Nina didn't own red earrings. She wore pearls when our parents visited and thin silver hoops when she wanted to look careless. Red felt like a decision she hadn't asked me to make with her. I put it on the counter beside her rose gold toothbrush and watched the mirror steam itself into a gentle lie. Our apartment lived above the bar I co-owned, the Salt Room, a refurbished warehouse with a bookshelf of whiskeys, a mezzanine that flirted with gravity, and a door that stuck unless you asked it nicely. We liked telling people our home was technically a loft because apartment sounded like a temporary emotion. Word choice has a way of imitating hope. I run the bar. Nina runs other people. She's an event planner who can teach a ballroom how to behave. When we met, she framed the world and I poured it. It felt like we were orchestrating the same party from different ends. 3 years in, we were good at being in love without always being in the same room. I told myself that was adulthood. I told myself lots of things while polishing glass. That night I went downstairs to swap a keg and returned to find the earring gone and a text from Nina in its place. Late client dinner. Don't wait up. Save me the pistachio panna cotta. I did, wrapped in plastic like an apology, and set it in the fridge beside the jar where we kept soy sauce packets and a fragment of our first apartment's blind cord, for luck. The little talisman looked tired. She came home after midnight smelling like cardamom and someone else's laugh. I tried to place it. Maybe oud cologne, maybe the kind of hotel lobby that prefers the word foyer. Nina kissed me on the cheek like a woman leaning out of a cab to say she'll text when she gets in. She saw the panna cotta, lifted the lid, and smiled. She ate in her slip, barefoot on the cold tile. There is a particular intimacy in watching someone chase a spoon with the tip of their tongue. We said good night, as if we were postponing a conversation with ourselves. In the morning, the earring was back beside the toothbrush, suddenly shy. "Finders keepers," she said when I lifted it. "It was stuck in the drain. I thought I lost it at the tasting." "You don't own red," I said, friendly, like a man commenting on the weather. She slid the earring into her palm and closed her fingers around it as if it might try to run. "I borrowed it from production. I was testing a vibe." "What vibe is that?" "Bold," she said, slipping it into a jewelry dish with a sound like a small door. "Or borrowed. They're similar." I watched the dish swallow the story. Then I kissed her neck and made a joke about red flags and red studs because I am sometimes braver as a clown. Nina laughed into my mouth, which is a good trick, and we let the day convince us it was ordinary. People always ask how you know. I don't know when I knew. I know when I stopped editing the evidence. It was a Thursday 2 weeks later when Nina sent a selfie from a restaurant she couldn't name without reminding you it had a waiting list. In the picture, a lamp behind her turned her hair into a halo, but the reflection in her wineglass betrayed a second glass the color of someone's charm. I zoomed until the pixels lost interest in lying. A man's hand, ringless, in a suit that had opinions. The caption read, "Working late, don't be mad." That is a caption you don't send to a person you're sure of. I put the phone down as the door to the bar opened, and Winter came in wearing cologne, and the kind of smile you can only afford after 3 cocktails. It was Iris, our newest neighbor, who'd moved into the top-floor studio 3 days ago with boxes labeled in a careful print, and a plant that looked like it knew how to forgive. I'd seen her in the stairwell carrying an antique mirror that refused to fit around the landing, her scarf half untied like an aside. I'd helped her tilt the frame. our fingers meeting on the cold gilt, and she'd said, "We know each other now," which was either a joke or a prophecy. "Is the kitchen open?" she asked, sliding onto the end stool where I keep the sad salt shaker. "For people who make good conversation," I said. "We stay open late." "I make excellent silence," she said. "Let's see if the chef can cook with that." She ordered the grilled peaches even though it was absolutely not peach season, then negotiated with the menu until we arrived at something our city would permit: charred citrus, burrata, black pepper honey, a kiss of rosemary. When I set the plate down, her sleeve slipped back to reveal a thin scar along her wrist that looked like a line someone drew and then changed their mind about. She saw me see it and didn't hide it. "Sometimes a story is just a story," she said lightly. "And sometimes it's not yours to tell." Over the next week, Iris became an elegant interruption. She'd arrive when the bar quieted, the hour when people either decide to go home together or go home honest, and claim the end stool like a seat refers to the person who needs it most. She asked about the menu the way you ask about a book with footnotes. She never asked about my marriage. She let the air answer for me and changed the subject if it felt like it was about to drown. We migrated to small rituals. A shared cigarette on the fire escape neither of us finished, the careful trade of a playlist link like a seed packet, laughter low enough to respect the sleeping city. Flirtation is the original renewable resource. Hours charged the room without setting anything on fire. I kept both hands on the rail. The anonymous message arrived on a Sunday, the digital equivalent of a knock in an old movie. No words, just a photo of Nina walking under the frosted canopy of the Haviland Hotel on 12th with the man from the wineglass reflection. The angle was either a coincidence or a stakeout. It didn't matter. The shot was too honest to argue with. Nina's head was tilted in a way she saved for listening to things she wanted to believe. His hand was at her elbow with the confidence of a man who kept a suite under a different name. My first impulse was action, the dumb, masculine kind. Storm into a lobby and ask the concierge to announce me as the husband. Send the picture back to Nina with a period that meant everything. Instead, I set my phone face down and cleaned the bar like it was a crime scene that could still decide what it wanted to be. Wiping wood can be a prayer if you're lonely enough. I heard Iris before I saw her, the soft hush of her coat on the door. She took one look at my face and said, "Whatever you're not drinking, pour me half." I poured her seltzer with a lime that needed reassurance. She rolled the glass between her palms like she was warming it. "Tell me the version you won't hate yourself for telling," she said. I showed her the photo. She didn't flinch, which is its own kindness. She looked at it a long time, then flipped the phone back to me with an expression almost like relief. "Thank you," she said. "That confirms something I needed to decide." I blinked. "Confirms." She looked at me like she was measuring whether I could hold the next sentence without dropping it. "The man in that picture is my husband," she said. "We've been separated for 5 months. He told me he was trying. He meant he was trying different elevators." I stared because sometimes exhale is a luxury. "You sent the picture." She shook her head. "No, but we have a friend who is better at morality when it comes with a telephoto lens." I moved in upstairs because I wanted to stop looking over my shoulder in the neighborhood where we built our excuses. Fresh walls help, even if the ceiling creaks like a conscience. She smiled without showing teeth. "Small world," she added, as if a world could be small when it's carrying two people's silence at once. We didn't decide to be on the same team. We already were. She asked me what I wanted to do. I told her I wanted to do nothing rash, which felt like chewing glass. She nodded like a woman who had learned to speak patience in her second language. On Tuesday, Nina pitched a brand launch to host at the bar. "It'll be tasteful but hot," she said, tapping my floor plan with her pen. "Neon silk, a dancer in a champagne coupe, but you know post-irony. Their executive team is coming. We'll run the VIPs through the alley, lock the mezzanine for whispers." She smiled. "It'll make the Salt Room famous for the right reasons." "The right reasons," I repeated, and swallowed the urge to ask for the list. I set the stage, to be honest. Not a trap, just fewer shadows. I asked my barback to remove the velvet curtain in the back hallway that had survived 3 owners and a scandal. I repositioned a security camera near the mezzanine, and for the first time since installing them, turned the monitor outward where guests could see their smaller selves pass by in conversation. The light over the alley door, which had been broken since spring, I replaced with one too bright to forgive a private mistake. I told myself I was improving safety. Sometimes the truth needs fluorescent bulbs. The night of the launch, the bar dressed itself in compliments. The champagne coupe dancer turned out to be a projection, a woman of light, forever almost wet. Nina moved through the room like a wish with a clipboard. My chest hurt when I watched her command not just attention but loyalty. People say yes to her because they want to belong to the world she's making up as she goes. He arrived late, tailored gray, a pocket square the color of a good alibi. His name was Damien, which is the sort of name that introduces itself. I watched him kiss Nina's cheek in a way that left something on the air and nothing on the skin. If a camera had been pointed at my face, I would have seen the moment a decision finds its coat. The alley light did its job. Midway through the night, Nina took him toward the back door with the entitled hush of people who plan to re-enter the party with a better story. The camera caught their passage in a small square of truth above the liquor shelf. Customers glanced up and then back at their drinks, politely uninterested. I watched as they paused in the bright rectangle. Damien said something that turned Nina's mouth into a reluctant smile, and she touched his sleeve the way you touch a railing you don't trust but need. Then she looked up, by accident or instinct, and saw the screen. We locked eyes across the room via a machine made for catching shoplifters. Her hand fell from his sleeve like it had never been there. For a heartbeat, we were just 2 people in a bright box, both seeing what we looked like when we forgot to pose. Nina returned to the bar alone. She stood between my register and the jar of maraschino cherries and looked at me like a woman measuring the distance between 2 versions of herself. "We need to talk," she said. Backstage words, daytime sentence. "After the party," I said, "when the perfume goes home." "Okay," she said and meant it. Damien left through the front, all angles and economy. Iris slipped in 10 minutes later, took in the brightness and the way Nina's shoulders had settled into an honest slope, and gave me a nod from the end stool that felt like a baton pass. She stayed until last call, not drinking, just present, a witness with good posture. When it was over, she helped me count glasses like it mattered. It did. Upstairs, Nina took off her shoes and not her ring. She poured 2 glasses of water as if hydration could negotiate for us. She sat at the table and did not touch me, which was kinder. "I fell in love with being new," she said, setting the sentence down like a hot pan. "Not with a person. With the person I am in a room they haven't already memorized." She stared at the condensation collecting on her glass. "That sounds like I'm courting everyone," she added, making a face at her own cowardice. "You're not a villain," I said. "You're just in a story you thought was shorter." "I didn't sleep with him," she said, as if the word might break if it walked barefoot. "But I wanted the option. I wanted to know I could be reckless and still write a check afterward." "We don't get itemized receipts for choices," I said softly. "We get the consequences in bulk." She closed her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said. Not performatively, not because you saw me. I'm sorry because I saw me. She took off her ring and placed it in the center of the table like a coin you can't spend. We agreed on space. She would stay with her sister for a month. We would meet once a week in a coffee shop that plays jazz too loudly and speak like people who want to learn a new language from someone they used to live inside. We did not punish, because punishment is just a story that lets you be cruel with better lighting. Downstairs, as the city thinned itself toward morning, I found Iris on the mezzanine, looking at the empty floor as if a party leaves footprints if you look hard enough. She turned when she heard me and searched my face for the kind of pain you hide. I shrugged. It was all there. "Do you want me to say I told you so?" she asked gently. "I want you to say something truer than that," I replied. She came to the rail, close enough that our sleeves might argue. "You didn't humiliate her," she said. "You held up a mirror and let her see herself without makeup." "Is that kinder?" I asked. "It's adult," she said. "Kindness is a different department." We stood shoulder to shoulder, looking down at the ring of light the bar leaves when it sleeps. I could feel the warmth from her arm through 2 layers of fabric. I remember thinking I would miss being touched lightly if this winter lasted too long. "I'm still married," she said quietly, answering a question I hadn't asked. "But the paperwork is just choreography now. I thought I wanted to burn the man down with spectacle. Then I realized fires require oxygen, and I'd have to breathe him in to keep it going." She smiled without joy. "Sometimes the sexiest thing I can imagine is silence." I turned toward her and she toward me, and whatever we were arrived carefully. We kissed like people who had rehearsed self-control and wanted to prove they hadn't wasted their time. Her mouth tasted faintly of the rosemary honey I'd drizzled over her cheese 6 hours earlier. My hand found the curve where her waist admits a secret, and I stopped there, content to know my palm could learn her without documenting it. She threaded her fingers into my hair and made a sound I felt rather than heard. The mezzanine sighed and held us up. We broke before the kiss could audition for something busier. She rested her forehead to mine, cheek warm against my knuckles. "If we do this," she said, "let's not do it like a reaction. I want to be the main plot in my own life." "Deal," I said. My voice surprised me by not wobbling. In the days that followed, the city kept its weather and people kept their appointments. Nina texted me pictures of her sister's cat being superior, and the book she was trying to read without checking her phone between every page. I sent her photos of the bar in daylight, which always looks like a theater removed from its lines. We were kind. It hurt in the right places. Iris and I invented small ways to move toward each other without tripping. We took walks in the early afternoon when the salt room smelled like lemons and new napkins, and a January sun made everything look freshly ironed. We talked about doors, literal and not. We stood in her studio while she rearranged the antique mirror that had introduced us, and listened to how furniture learns a room, then found the 2 or 3 inches of space that make a place breathe. Sometimes I put my hands on her hips to anchor the mirror while she adjusted the frame. Sometimes she turned into my touch the tiniest fraction and let me feel what that permission felt like. The last time I saw the red earring, it was in the jewelry dish with Nina's pearls, quiet and unambitious. I lifted it just once and set it down again, not as an accusation but as proof. A small, bright thing that had traveled through our plumbing to tell the truth and be done. If you made me write an ending, I'd cheat and give you a beginning. The night Nina moved her suitcase down the stairs, she hugged me longer than an apology and shorter than a promise. "I want us to be 2 good people who didn't get smaller," she said. I told her she was allowed to change sizes. Later, when the bar dimmed itself to a soft hum, I walked the mezzanine with Iris. We leaned over the rail and looked at the place where people stage their declarations and rescues. "What do you want?" she asked, the simplest question that embarrasses grown men. "I want to pour a drink I don't have to explain," I said. "I want to kiss you and know it belongs to this page, not the last one." She took my hand and placed it on the small of her back like a signature. Her eyes held mine with patience and intention. "Then don't explain," she said. We kissed again, not as consolation but as a verdict. I felt the heat rise under my palm and the way her body answered without asking for witnesses. The city went on being a city around us. The lights above the liquor shelf reflected in the glass like minor constellations, and I realized there is an erotics to truth that no censor can censor. Breath in sync, a hand stopping exactly where it should, two adults agreeing to be seen fully dressed and still somehow naked in their honesty. We didn't hurry. We let the moment be the length it needed. When we parted, I kept my hand at the small of her back, and she kept mine there as if to say, "You can hold something without gripping it. You can want without stealing. You can be faithful to the person you're becoming." Downstairs, the bar exhaled the day. Upstairs, the jewelry dish glittered politely. I turned off the lights one by one and left the alley lamp on, because I was done with the trappings of shadow. I thought of the earring in the drain and the way it had pulled the thread that undid a sweater, and I imagined all the ways a man can tell the truth, gently, loudly, with an open door and a kiss that doesn't hide. And in that small, honest glow, I felt my wedding ring not slip but settle, warm where it was, ready for whatever hand would wear it right.